Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our Business Transition Roadmap podcast. Today, I am thrilled, actually, to have Tom Kirk with us. He is an amazing person and a past owner of an incredible firm. He's got such an incredible journey that he's going to be able to share with us today. So, Tom, welcome. And if you would tell us a little bit about you and your journey, that would be great.
Sure.
Great place to start.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's an honor for me to spend this time with you. My journey, I started my professional career as a CPA. I worked for a large accounting firm in Orlando and had the opportunity at 27 years old to start my first business. Myself and two other accountants, we started a business with no money and $100,000 worth of debt and grew that business. That business, through my entrepreneurial path. So that was when I was 27. My last company that I sold, I was 59. So that's 32 years of an entrepreneurial journey. I went through a lot of transitions over that period of time. The way we started our CPA firm was a transition of sorts. We left. we left an existing firm, and that was terrible. It was not well planned, and we ended up suing each other and spending a lot of money on legal fees before we finally settled. From then until now, I've been through 5 or 6 other transitions. Buying firms, selling my interest in the CPA firm, starting what's now called FirstWave Financial, selling that to Laura Cheeseman, who's now the president, CEO, and 100% owner of the company. I know what doesn't work. Some of the transitions I did before this last one, I ended up in places I didn't want to be and spent a lot of money that I didn't need to spend. But this transition to Laura has been fabulous. I often tell my friends who are in similar positions of successful business owners that a well-orchestrated transition can be the cherry on top of a lifelong entrepreneurial journey. And so in a nutshell, that's kind of been my path.
Nice. So when you and I met each other as you were getting ready to leave that CPA firm and as you were getting ready to launch FirstWave Financial, that's when you and I met for the first time. And that was a transition in itself. So tell us a little bit about that transition and what was behind that.
Sure. Well, I was a lead partner in a medium-sized CPA firm in Central Florida at the time. I'd been doing financial planning and investment advice inside of that CPA firm, and in 1995 started FirstWave Financial with the help of my existing CPA firm and those owners. We collectively grew that company from nothing, absolutely nothing, to a multi-million-dollar business from 1995 until 2012, at which time the CPA firm was considering and did eventually end up selling to a regional firm. So when you and I met, Elizabeth, I was really on the horns of a dilemma about whether to transition this entrepreneurial effort of FirstWave Financial into that regional opportunity, which was a lot. It was very enticing to think that I might be able to take the intellectual property I'd created in FirstWave Financial and parlay it across a regional capability as opposed to just a local capability. But with your counsel and other friends and family, I realized that I really couldn't work well for somebody else. I had been my own boss for so long that what we ended up doing is I sold my interest in the CPA firm to my former partners. And I used that capital as a down payment to buy them out of the financial planning and investment advisory firm, FirstWave Financial, so that in 2012-13, I was no longer practicing public accounting at all. I hadn't really been doing a lot of public accounting for about 10 years prior to that. But I was no longer a partner in a firm that I had started. They sold and merged into a regional firm. And I was now the 100% shareholder FirstWave Financial, and was able to really for the first time, unilaterally drive that company with the support and help of the unique ability team that we had created there.
Nice. And one of the things that I appreciated about you at that time was you did a really nice deep dive into who you were as a person and what really would make you happy, what really would be the right place for you to be. And also keeping in mind too, how you wanted to manage and create the customer experience. So you wanted to have some guidance and direct control over that versus going into that regional firm. So talk a little bit about that for us.
Yeah, I think that the roots of that really were why I got into financial planning and investment advice in the first place was that as a CPA, it's a good racket, okay? You have to get your tax returns done. Every business needs an accountant. So you have to have an accountant. It's almost like you have to have a dentist. So I used to ask my partners when we were trying to create a transformative experience for our CPA firm, I would ask them how many of our customers and clients would come to us if they didn't have to. The answer was not very many. In the financial planning and investment advisory business, there's lots of other options out there for wealthy people to get good advice, not so good or good advice. So you've got to create a transformative, unique experience for those customers and clients that they cannot achieve anyplace else, for which they'll come from miles around to pay a premium, to stand in line to be able to work with you. And that was a kind of experience that I was creating even within my CPA firm and was very much able to amplify once I went on my own with the help of other people. I mean, I'm kind of an ideation person, but I need help. I can bake things up. I can make them real. I can prototype them, but I need somebody else's help to make them repeatable and effective and efficient and profitable. And that's the team that I was able to create in FirstWave Financial.
Yeah, and I think that that's true of many, if not most, entrepreneurs, that they really are those leader visionary type people that can get it off the ground and then have to have that team. And that team it's a very, very important part of building a company. So fast forward, you're in FirstWave, things are going well. You are happy, right, doing the work and just engaged in that. And so what triggered or had you start to think about this transition? And because, I meet business owners all the time that say, oh, well, that transition, I don't need to think about that yet. I'm not ready to exit. So that's a long way off. I've got a long way to go and I want to keep building and growing. And, that's really my focus right now. So we'll do that later. I'd like for you to talk a little bit about what created a sense of urgency for you and how did that manifest inside of you? Sure.
Yeah, I remember it very clearly. So, in 2003, back it up a little bit, I had my first open heart surgery at 46 years old. I had a triple bypass operation and had what's called the Widowmaker blockage in my heart. That was in 2003. I started FirstWave Financial in 1995. So I was a few years in and I survived that. In 2013, 10 years almost to the year later, I was going to my cardiologist as I normally did. I'm a pretty compliant patient. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I exercise. I eat right. And he said, you know what? You've got a heart murmur and you need to get your affairs in order. His exact words. And I was like, I beg your pardon? Are you saying that I'm dying? He said, well, we're all dying. He says, and this will kill you, but not right away. You've got what they called aortic valve regurgitation. My aortic valve was not closing properly, so my heart wasn't functioning well, and I was asymptomatic. I did not notice it, but they could hear it. And he said, it's going to cause you problems. Eventually, your heart function is going to fall off so far that even if you have it fixed, it won't come back. So you need to seriously be thinking about it. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, it's better to have this when you're healthy than when you're not. when you have good insurance than if you don't, and when you can take extended periods of time off from work in case you have to. And so I left from that meeting and started a process of working with the team to imagine me being gone for different lengths of time for different levels of severity. By that, I mean 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, periods of time, accessible only by phone, in person, electronically, not at all. Some version of that, I'm an accountant, right? So I did a grid.
Of course you did.
I did it. Of course I did.
Of course you did.
I tell people I'm a recovering accountant. So I did this grid of all these variables, and we started to identify specifically what would from team management, customer service, finance, business development, various categories, what would work, what would continue to work in those different squares, and what would start to fall apart. And once we identified what our vulnerabilities were, we began to either immediately or build contingency plans for filling in those voids in case that eventuality happened. And I remember very well a conversation I had with you, Elizabeth, around that time. I said, I got a crazy idea. I said, I'm planning in case I'm not here by accident. What happens if we start planning for me to not be here on purpose? Mm-hmm. Why don't I just sell the darn thing? Because we had created, if I was, in a business, as we all know, is more valuable if it's not dependent on the creator. And I was there. I was 70% of the way there before this thinking. And then after that thinking, we were probably 90, 95% there. It was sustainable without me. I was really concerned about taking care of the customers, taking care of the team, taking care of my family. Yep. And we got that all figured out. So I started a conversation. Yes, I remember saying, I got a crazy idea. And, okay, what is it, Tom? And I told you. And then we started the transition roadmap development process. And here we are. I sold the business.
Here we are. Yeah, I remember it was interesting too. We did start that process, and the beginning of that process, I remember I was in California, and I happened to be out for a little bit of a hike, exercise, walk, just between a couple of appointments, just getting a little bit of fresh air. And I remember you calling me up on the phone and saying, "Hey, I had a conversation with my lawyer, and she said that I needed to figure out what I wanted before I went back to my lawyer." And I think that's important for our listeners to know, because I think a lot of people go to the lawyer or the CPA first. And I don't think that's all bad to do that. However, you had an experience where you thought you knew, and you were ready to go to the lawyer, and that wasn't quite the case.
It wasn't at all. It was quite a eye-opening experience for me, because I've been working with lawyers my entire business life, all different kinds of lawyers, for and against me. I called her up and I said, "Hey, I'd like for you to help me structure a transition of my business." And she goes, "I can't do that." And I said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, you tell me what you want to do and I'll put it into words, but I can't tell you what to do." And so right. I was floored. And I think it is a classic mistake. It's a journey, your book. You talk about, these professionals are necessary for different parts of the process, but they aren't the first people you should talk to. I would suggest, your process is the first thing that you need to go through, which is what I did. My sixth or seventh transition, I finally learned that.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier that you have a belief that this was your best transition. What made it the best transition for you?
The result. The Bible says you can tell the tree by its fruit. Right? What does the tree bear is what tells what the tree is made of. And what's happened is I am having my best life. Laura is being very successful. The clients are continuing to be treated well. The team is still in place. I still send business, family, and friends to that firm because I know how they'll be treated. I can walk around my community with my head held high. All of those things are the fruit of the effort that we put into the transition, and that's the evidence that that has not happened in my other transitions. And the other transitions, like I said, my very first one, we ended up suing each other for 3 years. We ended up merging back together 7 years later. We bought a firm in Orlando that was just, $250,000 down a rat hole. Nothing ever came from it. It would, I've had bad fruit. This fruit is awesome. It's been fabulous. It's been such a joy. I'm so grateful to have gone through the process and to still be involved. We'll talk about maybe what's worked and what's not worked. I've really been blessed by. I sold the business to Laura, and part of the contract included a 2-year employment agreement for tax reasons and for transition planning. I'm on the 5th or 6th year extension of that. We sat down every fall, and she decides if she wants me to keep doing things for her that I would like to do, and we have a handshake deal, and we do another year. And it's been a blessing for me to still stay connected to the business at a very high level, and to kind of be Laura's wingman, if you will, like she was for me for all those years. I'm able to communicate and operate at a level with her and for her that she probably doesn't have with anybody else on the team. And I'm grateful for that opportunity. So just so many great things have come from it. So that's evidence to me that the transition was the best.
Thank
Does that
you.
make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to mention that by design, literally by design in the roadmap, part of your next adventure, right? Part of your next adventure was to be able to continue your creativity, to continue to write, to continue to market, continue to talk about the firm and help other people, right? Help even new potential clients come into the firm. But that was what is, important to you. So,
right.
Yeah. So that 2-year was by design, and it fulfilled you. And it also helped Laura to make sure that she had somebody that she could come and speak with that knew the firm inside and out. And also it didn't have any hidden agendas, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's sometimes hard when you're going through that and all of a sudden you're the successor, you've got the business, everything's there, and you're like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm the owner. Now what?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that was a big part of your success on both sides, is to have that by design, how you were going to work together. And it was fabulous.
Has been. I agree.
Yeah. So, let's talk quickly, I guess, about, is there anything that we talked a little bit about what did work and what the outcomes were? We haven't talked about anything that you thought could have been improved, could have been changed, maybe was missed. Because, in the podcast, one of my goals is to help other business owners learn from other people's experiences and then try not to make the same mistakes. So if you were going to redo or do something different in this last transition, would there be anything that you would do?
Yeah, I thought about that when you sent me the invite, and if there was anything that I might have done a little differently, when I sold the business to Laura, I basically 100% seller financed it for her. She really didn't have the assets yet to afford it, and I had other opportunities where they would have stroked me a check, but it would have not complied with all the things that you helped me discover about what was important to me about that transition. So I did that. And and part of my goal in selling was to free me up. I had a lot of freedom already. Dan Sullivan talks about the 4 entrepreneurial freedoms, time, money, relationship, and purpose. And I had a lot of those, but I didn't have as much as I wanted. I'm a crybaby. I was taking 150 days off a year, but I wanted to take more. I had enough money. But I had to work with some people I didn't want to work with anymore. That was relationship freedom. I knew what my purpose was. I know why I'm here, and I was doing that. But the time thing was mainly I wanted more freedom of time, and And freedom of money, I guess, from having my neck stretched out across this tabletop for the 30 plus years I've been an entrepreneur. I had signed so many pieces of paper. I borrowed so much money. I'd hired so many people. By the grace of God, it's all worked, but, it could all go poop in a minute. And I was ready to, back off from some of that risk. And by selling to Laura, I did that. But by seller financing, I kept a bunch of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I kept a bunch of it. The payout was contingent on the firm continuing at least at the level that it was, if not higher. And so I really didn't get the freedom of money, the money freedom, the risk freedom right away. Now I have. Laura has created enough wealth. She's refinanced me out on her own credit, not with the first transaction. She borrowed money from the bank that I guaranteed, and I financed the rest. The next transaction she borrowed from the bank, and I guaranteed it. The last time she borrowed from the bank, and I didn't guarantee it, and I'm paid off now. And it's a wonderful feeling, and it lets me now go forward with estate planning things with my family that I couldn't do before because I still felt at risk for a large part of my net worth. So if I had to do it over again, knowing that I was going to have that risk, I probably would have kept a little bit more of the return. I may not have sold all 100% in one fell swoop. Maybe a controlling interest, so Laura could run it like she wants to and like she has, but getting more of a return on almost like an equity risk that I had. It wasn't just a note receivable risk, the interest rate. That was contingent on the entrepreneurial value of that business continuing, which I'm willing to take. I've taken that risk for a long time, but I didn't make the return during those risk years that maybe I could have. And I've got enough money, so I'm not crying about it. It's not, I think I left some money on the table maybe, but if I had to do it over again, that's what I would consider. I would consider if I had to 100% seller finance it, then have the repayment of that contingent on profitability and continuation of the business, I would probably retain some profit sharing part of that business as well. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm not just at risk, but I'm getting some of the return.
That makes sense. Absolutely. And I guess that's why I think it's so important not to always go to the how and how much first, because I remember going through that in your objectives matrix, which is where you put down everything you wanted for yourself, for the business, for your successor, for everybody, your family. You did a deep dive there. And one of my favorite objectives of all time was yours was, I want to be able to surf when the surf is up. That was my test. Yep. That was so neat because you don't know what the weather's going to be like, when the surf is going to be up, how it's going to be. And it's just complete freedom and complete ability to go whenever you want. Freedom of time. But as you walk through, really understanding what you want is important, because many times the successor doesn't have they don't have the money to buy. And many times, though, that successor is probably the best option for meeting a majority of your desires and your objectives, because they know the business, you've already worked with them, et cetera. And it's not the easiest road. The one that you took was not the easiest road by far. Mm-hmm. But it's a road that many owners decide to take because they care so much about their company, about their employees, about their customers and clients. They want to make sure that the consistency stays there and the culture continues forward. We strategize all the time on partial sales, partial transactions, and then it just goes into this big long timeline of, at some point in time, there's an agreement out there where that person, based on milestones, can then know that they're going to have that business, and they also know what's required of them. So interesting that you might have changed that or shifted that, because that risk is still there and it is important. And I have never seen an owner who decided to carry that note And then if it didn't go well, decide that they were going to have collateral and go take their successors home or something like that, because the business then no longer exists. And we also have many stories in our books, not in my books. My businesses that we've worked with have done well because the owners stick around and they've got a good plan. But there are many out there where we all know that the business owner left, in my opinion, leaves too quickly and then has to come back in, and their risk is high because they come back in and have to rebuild the business because it wasn't operated properly or didn't do well. So many of those kinds of stories. So yeah, you took an amazing path forward, and without your engagement in it and your commitment to it, you would not have the results that you have today. You made a huge commitment to be able to make this happen. I think entrepreneurs do that all the time when they're operating the company. And the commitment that you made, though, as you exited and transitioned out of the company was impressive.
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So
it's kind of how I am, though. It's either all or nothing. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to mess around.
That's right.
It's not worth just spending time. May as well, take your best shot, and then let the chips fall. But you took your best shot. If you didn't take your best shot and the chips don't fall well, then you're to blame.
Yep, absolutely. You've got some beautiful Porsches behind you in those pictures. One of your favorite things to do.
It is. Yeah.
That was part of your next adventure.
It was, yeah. So, in 2015, I sold the business to Laura. 2016, I had my second open heart surgery and got my valve replaced, and I survived. Praise God. 2017, I got my racing license with historic sports car racing. 2018, I won the national championship in historic sports car racing, HSR, with the BRM Endurance Challenge and the WeatherTech Sprint Series, driving at air-cooled 911. And I'm still driving and instructing with Porsche Club of America and Chin Track Days. Actually, next month, August, I'm going to Road Atlanta to instruct and drive there for Chin Track Days. Yeah, so it's a blast.
That's a blast. And how does it feel to have this transition so well and to be able to be living your next adventure?
I feel very fortunate. I've got a lot of successful entrepreneurial friends, most of them men, come to think of it. Although, Laura is one, but I'm thinking in this transition world, people that I grew up with that have their own business, and they may have bought that business from somebody else. I'm thinking somebody in particular. I'm trying to get engaged with you, actually. I've given them some of your information. And, I'm 67, they're 65 to 75 years old, and, they don't have that sense of urgency. They don't, you know what I mean? It's just really hard. I try to watch for what I'm a practice development person, right? So I watch for what I call the blink. I wait to be invited in, and they raise a point about some challenge you're having, and what usually it centers around is they're chasing the how. They get distracted by a how, and then they run into frustration, and then they drop the ball. And so I want to get them engaged in your process to turn that situation around. But I feel, as you say, how do I feel? I feel really very fortunate that it's worked for me, that it's worked, everybody that I was concerned about, me, the team, the family, the clients, Laura, the community, our business is a fiduciary business, right? Putting our clients' best interest first. And, there's an implied agreement we have with these people that we're going to be here forever for you and your family. And here I was stepping out, and to see the firm continue on to be there for people that we have been part of their family for 20 and 30 years. Unfortunately, I was at a funeral of a doctor friend of mine that I was one of his first accountants back in the 80s. I was his accountant first. I was his wealth coach next. I was an investment advisor, 20, 30, 35-year relationship. And to have those be able to continue and feel good about it and send more business and my family. And, we've got multi-generations of people now being served by what we were able to create there. It's just, Zig Ziglar used to say, you can get everything, how to get everything you want to out of your life is to help as many as other people get everything they want to out of their life.
Yeah.
And that's been the case for me. I've gotten way more than I deserve by trying to help other people as much as possible in every way I possibly can. And this is just part of it. That's
incredible. Thanks for sharing that. And that's the idea, because what you've been talking about is people first. And I think that that's very important to be able to have that experience today from past history, right? And to keep that, because so many people that just falls off. They are in their business, they transact out of it, it's over, and then they're on to something else. So yeah, it's fun to be able to hear that from you. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Another challenge just for entrepreneurs thinking about doing this that actually you helped me with another part of your process is the Pathfinders experience that we did together. I became aware that I needed to watch for where I could express my unique ability other than what I'd been doing for 30 years as an entrepreneur. Because, my understanding of this unique ability I have is it's going to show up everywhere because that's how I operate. So watching the horizon, whether it's my church or I actually am helping a friend of mine start a new nonprofit we're really kind of excited about. It's an investment advisory firm organized in the state of Florida as a 501c3 organization to provide fiduciary level investment advice to people who can't afford to pay for it. And I'm really excited about that because I've been struggling with how to provide, I know how to be an advisor to wealthy people, how to provide that level of competence and confidence and integrity to people who can't afford to pay for it. And Michael's figured it out, and he asked me to be on his board. So nice. That's an opportunity for me to ideation, create, prototype, implement. I'm not making any money at it, and I don't care to make any money at it. It's just fun. So watching for those opportunities to express my unique ability outside of what I was doing for 30 years was something you also helped me identify as important for my well-being.
Yep. Yeah, for your fulfillment. Yep. And by the way, so I know we're basically at our time, so I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Before I do that, I just want to let everybody know that the Laura that he is speaking of is the Laura who is the co-author of It's a Journey, the book that she and I wrote together. And and the experiences that she had as well on the successor side and the financial aspect of, that whole process. So anyway, I just wanted to recognize her. She's an amazing person as well. And so that's good. Last question for you. I always like to end these sessions with one thing that you would like to leave with our viewers, listeners, that you think would be most important for them to keep in mind as they approach their transition and walk through it?
Avoid chasing how. Avoid chasing the how. People are going to come at you with how solutions all the time. Most of the articles you read about, whether it's an ESOP or seller financing or a roll-up or, internal transition, they're all about the how. And I've chased lots of hows. The big difference this time is starting with why. Why do you want to sell the business? Who do you want to maybe sell it to? When would you like to have it happen? And what are you selling? Those are the top questions that you mentioned in It's a Journey. That made all the difference in the world. Going through that process, then I could look at various hows that were being presented to me and grade them against what I just said was important to me. And it just made the choice of the direction to take evident and successful because they blended together. So avoid the takeaway is avoid chasing the how. Just say, thanks for the idea. Put that in the back burner, but start off with why. Why do you want to transition? What do you want to accomplish for yourself and others? When would you like to do it? And to whom would you maybe like to sell it to? Go through that process first, and then the rest makes sense.
Nice. Nice. Well, Tom, I so appreciate you and the time that we had today to spend together and all of your insight into your situation and your journey. So just appreciate you and thank you so much for being here.
Well, the pleasure's all mine. I wish you all the best, and thank you so much for the opportunity.